US, the MSS is something of a mashup. It conducts intelligence operations abroad, like the CIA, counter-espionage at home, like the FBI, and cyber snooping, like the NSA.
When you hear the details of how the MSS operates, you think it wouldn't be out of place in a spy movie. The number of employees is classified, and the exact location of its headquarters is an unknown, though it's thought to be in a nondescript building in Beijing. It doesn't have a public website, and it doesn't have a press office.
What's clear is that the MSS is key to Chinese President Xi Jinping's efforts to tighten control over security. Its head, Chen Wenjing, is an ex-police chief who helped direct Xi's nationwide anti-graft campaign.
Welcome to the glorious People's Republic of China. This country went from a feudal backwater to a global hegemon thanks to the efforts of the 100 million-strong Communist Party. This was in large part thanks to Deng Xiaoping's reform and opening up, which allowed China to become the workshop of the world. Yet it would be a lie to say that it arrived where it is entirely clean. Corruption has remained a persistent problem, from the local cadre taking bribes to the higher-ups in Beijing doing favors. This must not be allowed to continue, as we will grow too weak to prevent the country to be yet again torn apart. Already separatist forces are at work in Xinjiang, Tibet, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, emboldened by foreign powers wishing for our downfall. But today, the most pressing matter remained the new COVID-19 virus, which has spread from the city of Wuhan to the rest of the country, forcing us to install strict lockdowns on the region. Yet this was not enough, as now reports of the virus spreading overseas have started showing up and making news internationally. To make things worse, profiting from our current focus on our internal problems, the American vultures have now decided to reaffirm their commitment to prevent full Chinese unification and the end of idiotic rump state known as Republic of China. First with condescending declarations, then by giving them weapons destined to be aimed at us, and then with a visit of their House Speaker, openly mocking the One China policy. But now is not yet the time to respond or act, as on top of the pandemic plaguing our economy just as much as our people, the rapidly growing instability of the Saudi government has translated itself on the oil prices, tearing further the world markets with them. Shortages are already making the situation at home more complicated, forcing us to put in place strict restrictions. There will not be any tolerance for the virus either. Order must be restored at any cost, despite the discontentment of some who may protest this. We shall also begin the search for a vaccine as quickly as possible to not only secure a fast return to normalcy, but also cement our position as a global leader in innovation.
Dear Comrade President, the Ministry of State Security and its infiltrated assets have thoroughly studied the current socio-political situation of the United States and have come to the following conclusion. There is a 74.291% chance that the country will face an unprecedented systemic crisis within the next 20 months. If such an event were to occur, the party must stand ready for a substantial increase in black swan events around the world.
Now, about the oil crisis. We must self-critique and recognize that this situation merely exposed the cracks of our existing energy supply system. A new approach must be considered, one where we fully make use of the resources our vast land possess, instead on relying on unstable trade routes stretched across the world. Just as predicted, the American crisis is here, although it is far exceeding our predictions.
Comrade, our agents on the ground are reporting that the USA has fallen to extreme levels of anarchy, with Washington exerting control over less than 10% of the country's territory. The situation is less analogous to the nation's first civil war than China's own warlord period, and as such its outcome is unpredictable due to the high number of factions involved. However, with the USA removed from the global system, one must expect a significant geopolitical reconfiguration, leaving many opportunities for us to exploit.
We are finally starting to recover from the oil crisis, and at the same time the vaccine against COVID is now ready for mass-scale use. While we are still dealing with the ripples of the American economic collapse, it is merely a matter of time before the status quo is restored.
Dear Comrade President, our reports indicate that due to the near total collapse of American influence in the region, Japan, Australia, and Taiwan have increased military cooperation and formed an alliance named Pacific Defense Treaty Organization. Its objectives towards us are comparable to that of NATO toward Russia, which is to undermine our influence in East Asia and encircle us, with countries like India, Indonesia, and South Korea being interested in joining in the future.
With most of the problems behind us and new trials ahead, now is the time for the 20th National Congress, which shall see the elections of a new secretary, or at least, this is what would have happened normally. As to the surprise of the world, General Secretary Xi Jinping has been elected for a third term, violating the unwritten rules of the party. At the dismay of some, what we need most at this moment is reliable experience, firm unity, and speed, as before us lies an opportunity of a kind that may never present itself again. American presence has died out, while the PDTO that is supposed to succeed it is only in its infancy, making this very moment the best one to reclaim Taiwan and make China one again. Let's not waste any more time. First step is to blockade the island to make sure there is no interference once the day come, and fragilize the current separatist government politically. Second is to seize the Kinmen Islands, which despite being only a few kilometers away from the mainland, was kept under separatist control. The battle to reclaim it was small, yet provided us with large amounts of insight. Third and final one before the full invasion is a series of preemptive strikes on Taiwan's critical defense infrastructure, destined to cripple any resistance to our landing. The plans are drawn. The terrain is prepared. The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force are all ready. The end of the Chinese Civil War and the invasion of the Republic of China starts now. We have failed. This is something we must recognize. We were unable to maintain a stable presence on the island and underestimated the enemy, be it the ROC itself or its allies in Tokyo or Canberra. As a result, after our initial assault that proved disastrous, we were unable to launch another one that wasn't clearly doomed to fail, forcing us to ultimately give up. Now the Taiwanese government is emboldened, openly discussing official separation from China as a nation, while for us and what is next, only one thing is known, and it is that dark times are ahead. This was the kick that shattered the already fragilized party into multiple petty factions that are, however, still united against us, from the average rank and file working non-stop to hold things together at their scale, to the high-level cadre trying to salvage their career. And outside of it, the discontent of the general population is far more open, with social media filled with vandalized portraits of us and calls to protests. And yet, this situation is just some bad day that will pass compared to what is unfolding in Xinjiang, where the turmoil turned into a door open to fundamentalists' militias, who effectively started a local civil war.
Xi Jinping, the one whose ambition started this whole mess, has finally been kicked out, but not by vote of the cadres or the revolt of the masses, but by the tanks of the very army he toyed with. However, removing him only leaves us with a party with no clear direction, as factions with opposing ideals are vying for power. First, there's the liberals, who think the crisis was ultimately caused by the excessive authoritarianism of the government, and that democratic reforms would ensure that jingoistic strongmen like Xi will never rise again. Second are the new left, for who the rightist deviation from the core communist ideals is what led to the party's multi-level corruption, and advocate for a return to the fundamentals of Marxism that made this country great. Yet neither of those visions are truly satisfying or even just good. The last thing we need in these already hard times is a Chinese Gorbachev and everything that will come with it. And the world is too wild and ever-changing to seriously consider a retreat into Maoist nostalgia or ideological dogmatism. What we need is a firm hand and yet an open mind, and there is only one faction that can offer it, the so-called revanchists. Made up of everything from Confucian nationalists to technocrats, and from ambitious generals to the secretive MSS. They are by far the most diverse faction, and yet all agree that now more than ever, the People's Republic of China must use its capacities to the fullest extent to secure itself as the master of the 21st century. But after snap elections to decide who will be the face of the new government, it seems like this wide coalition is already narrowing, with Qin Wenqin becoming the new leader of the country, representing the security apparatus of the state and various experts. He is the face of a far more pragmatic vision than the populistic nationalists or the self-serving officers, yet just as, if not even more radical if the rumors are true. In his inauguration speech, Qin emphasized the need for a modern security architecture to ensure that, like a well-oiled machine, the Chinese state can function without perturbation, be they internal or external in origin, and that only through innovation and scientific advantages in every field can such an architecture be achieved.
As our first action, we shall finish off the social perturbations still affecting the western sectors of the nation. Thankfully, the eradication of the rebellious elements was already completed in Xinjiang, where those were the most severe, leaving us only with the resolution of the Tibetan problem. Multiple agents of the PDTO were discovered not only among the separatist forces, but more interestingly, within the local party branch. Of course, the easiest solution to implement would be to simply remove those Trojan horses. But why even reveal in such a way that the vulnerabilities they are using simply don't exist anymore? It is ultimately more optimal to make them into Trojan cages and feed those agents false info. Hostile entities have tried for years to decipher the Chinese mystery, each conclusions more laughable than the previous one. From the increased wealth making us see the errors of our ways and embrace democracy, to the collapse always a few weeks away, to the claims of false population numbers. By opening their mouth, they reveal more about their inside thinking than ourselves, who, as some say, do nothing and win. with our accession to the direction of the state and security and stability as our prime directives, a new outlook on science is needed. And as such, previously discarded individuals in the scientific field have been brought back to the forefront, most prominently He Jiankui, who was convicted for illegal genetic experiments on babies. His efficiency and knowledge in the study and engineering of biological code, however, made him a critical asset for state health projects. Also, we cannot confirm nor deny rumors about catgirls. Homelessness has sadly always been a persistent issue, but the socio-political conditions of the past few years drastically increased its intensity, be it veterans who outlived their strategic use, or others who reached an extremely low level of wealth during the previous economic perturbations. Several ways of resolving this problem were proposed from various parts of the state, with, for example, the Army's idea of using them for low-level tasks within the manufacturing process. However, the most promising proposal is that of the scientific community, who suggests that these individuals should participate in high-risk but high-reward experiments and research programs as test subject. We cannot stay contained within our own borders, especially as the PDTO is establishing its own connections throughout the continent. We must display our role as the central unit of Asia. Outer Mongolia must be reintegrated within our structure, using Russia's prioritization of the West to our advantage. Meanwhile, Indochina constitute a potential security risk on our borders, given their opening to the PDTO's signal. These areas shall become special administrations, where, as Jiankui proposed, scientists will be granted complete authority, allowing them to pursue their experiments and research on a scale unseen before. With the end of American presence in Afghanistan and the Taliban takeover that followed it, the country effectively became blacklisted by the wider international community. Even we are not fully trusting of such an extremist regime on the border of an already troublesome region. Yet a quick analysis revealed that it is full of untapped potential, and that while reconfiguration by force would prove to be at a net loss, the Taliban themselves would be receptive to a restarting of international contact that would see their economy boom. While Afghanistan's modernization is merely in its infancy, our own just reached a new threshold of speed, leading us into countless uncharted domains. In several secret facilities undetectable by the public are stored technologies that are beyond what science fiction on ink and paper was able to predict. Self-evolving algorithms, human-machine cerebral interface, living human-animal hybrids. As impressive as they may seem, China always has been the most technologically advanced nation on human history, only losing its advantage to the Europeans for a few short centuries. And so, as ironic as it might seem, our technocratic regime is merely restoring the traditional hierarchy of the world. But today, however, sole mastery over the physical space will be insufficient for our goals, as the development of the internet and the gradual update of societies to adapt to it led to the release of cyber warfare as viable field of confrontation. None of its categories, be it informational manipulation, crypto disruption, or hardware sabotage, shall remain unexplored by us.
Millions and millions of people were caught by surprise when the electrical grid suddenly crashed.
5 national cyber police forces are involved in this attack.
Chinese sleeper viruses on the electric grid.
Nuclear power plants will be hacked.
Hospitals are closed.
They completely knocked out the substation.
Major disruptions to the water supply.
Police in riot gear.
Chinese are doing this. The Chinese government is doing this.
The world just learned that a team of Chinese scientists in Iceland has managed to bring back mammoths from extinction. While a great achievement in itself, the most interesting data remain the global public's reaction to it and advancements in genetics. But as one species is brought back through the latest updates in biotechnology, another one's population reached zero as a consequence of our industrialization efforts, which deteriorated the natural environment to severe levels. The Yangtze alligator was unable to adapt to the ever-accelerating change in the world, and while sad, shall become a lesson for those who wish to leave this race for progress and supremacy. The first gene-editing hospital in the country and the world just started its operations in Beijing, allowing customers to optimize their offspring's performances at a genetic level and preemptively remove any error in the genetic code. Of course, international institutions, still operating under an outdated moral framework, have condemned this obvious progress and turned to Luddism by putting heavy restriction on that technology. For years, Myanmar has been a heavily chaotic place, even before our current Cold War with Japan was initiated. And yet it gave a new meaning to the Civil War, as the dominant faction, the People's Defense Force, is supported by Japan in hopes of opening a new front against us. Such a breach cannot be allowed to be opened, and Myanmar must become a stable area without hostile elements. To this end, we will install the pro-Chinese National Progressive Alliance of Myanmar's people as the country's new government. Our next grand technological project are the Sino-Futurist cities, a plan to completely rework the major urban centers of the nation into intelligent complexes using AI, where drones, algorithms, and smart infrastructure will work in perfect synchronicity to produce unmatched levels of productivity. The massive quantities of data generated will furthermore be exploited to optimize future policy updates and increase espionage protection. But one of the most prominent features of these Sino-Futurist cities shall be the mass commercialization of the eVTOLs, also known as flying cars. Thought to be just mere fictional speculation with little technical reality by the crumbling West, the late testing stages have already been achieved by us as of 2025. In Guyang has been hosted a global science forum, where researchers and intellectuals from all over the world discussed the impact technological progress, future or present, will have on government structure. Researchers and philosophers from all over the world have been invited. But the moment that drew the most attention was the round-table discussion featuring He Jiankui and British thinker Nick Land, famous for his thesis about capitalism and AI, where the later concluded that a triangular model with scientists on top would be most optimal. There exist many rumors about Land and his possible connections with the Chinese government, but those are of course unfounded. War is accelerated technological change, and as such, the current conflict between Europe and Russia offer a unique opportunity to test our newest military hardware in real-life warfare scenario. And in exchange, the Russians will be satisfied to see their skies patrolled by our drones and their soldiers protected by our exoskeletons. Of course, the museum countries of Europe have once again complained about it, but officially, we are perfectly neutral in this faraway conflict. It is just that Russia happens to be one of our customers, something those capitalists should understand. After years of work, one of our largest projects has come to completion. The Beijing-Tianjin megacity, now the largest and most populated urban area on Earth, with over 39 million inhabitants. And with the addition of the Sino-Futurist model, it will effectively cease to be a city, and instead become the largest machine in human history, and take its place as the central processing unit of not just China, but of the new world to come. The latest report on the environmental situation is clear. Our pursuit of efficiency and industrialization has irreversibly corrupted the biosphere to the point of ecological collapse. And it is not just the natural spaces outside the urban structures that are transformed, but human organisms themselves have been altered by this pollution, with worrying levels of heavy metals found in blood cells and the rarefaction of clean air in cities. After years of help, restructuration, and development, the graveyard of empires has finally been conquered, not through brute strength like the outmoded Americans, but by an economic backdoor that allowed our influence to seep in. As a result, Afghanistan has been updated into something unrecognizable for those who didn't keep the pace. With high-tech skyscrapers installed in place of the ruined houses and ancient palaces of Kabul, EVTOLs and drones flying between the mountain peaks, and recluse tribes wielding weapons still unseen in the West. Another of our project that has come to completion is the Thunder Wall, a gigantic network of countless satellites, antennas, and microdrones spread all across the country. It aimed to transform the national security apparatus into what can only be described as an AI-managed techno-panopticon that is virtually indestructible and impossible to hack, and can see every square meter of land from the most remote parts of the Gobi Desert to the smallest alley in Hong Kong, in both the visible spectrum and infrared. It's such a firewall to cover our tracks, we can start the preparation for Operation Tiangong. There is only a 0.64% probability of this happening. A cyber attack of a scale unseen before, aimed at our critical infrastructure and military hardware. Our best experts still struggle to understand where was the security flaw that was exploited, but it is 100% obvious that the PDTO was behind it. and our hypothesis were quickly proven, as soon as we managed to reinitialize some of our radars, dozens of PDTO vessels were detected approaching our positions. In the same time period, our air defense systems on land were activated by Japanese HVGP missiles targeted at our military bases. Years of training, thousands of computer simulations, hundreds of billions of yuans invested in research, hundreds of geniuses theorizing. All for this day, under the light of which will reveal its result either as a throne of gold for the world or a pile of dust for history. The Great Asian War has begun. They beg for our surrender, trying to breach our emotions with false promises of peace and democracy, just as they did with Pan-Asian unity nearly a century ago. We did not bend the knee back then when China was weak and fragmented, and to even think about it now is an insult in itself. Asian unity will be achieved, but it will either be inside our great machine or in radioactive ashes. Hiroshima and Nagasaki will look merciful compared to this.
In the ruins of the Forbidden City, the remnants of the Chinese government were forced to sign an humiliating treaty enshrining their defeat in the Great Asian War, dismantlement of the nuclear arsenal and of most of the Chinese army, confiscation of its navy, permanent Japanese military bases along the coast, independence from Mongolia, Tibet, and Xinjiang. But by extinguishing the fires of war with the PDTO, the fires of rage burning inside the Chinese masses only grew stronger. A century and multiple generations of struggles made useless by a clique of idiotic scientists was a common sentiment shared by most Chinese, with massive riots erupting across the already devastated nation. Even the remnants of the PLA denounced what was left of the Chinese government, followed by overt insurrections by parts of the high command. Regional governors and party bureaucrats then were next to cease communications and effectively seceding. Tibet and Xinjiang ended up getting their independence, but due to the rushed nature of their declaration and the spillover from the collapsing Chinese state, chaos still reached them too. All across the country, corrupt officials built their own fiefdoms from the ruble, madmen laid claim on the mandate of heaven, and the sealed doors of forbidden laboratories have opened. The second warlord era has begun, but where the previous ones were fought with horses and swords, then with tanks and guns, this time the Chinese realm shall be scarred in all its aspects by technological monsters and biological weaponry. In Beijing, the central government effectively ceased to exist as a unified entity, as its parts openly at war with each other, and Chun Wenqing himself fled to the north. Eventually, a rogue unit would enter the city, not as a conqueror, but merely as another destroyer, dealing out a spite a final blow aimed at the remnants of the PRC's government before leaving.
When you rise up beyond yourself somehow, you lifted into some archetype.
by techno-capital singularity and Renaissance rationalization and oceanic navigation, black into commoditization takeoff. The body count climbed through a series of globe wars. Emergent planetary commercium crashes the Holy Roman Empire, the Napoleonic continental system, the Second and Third Reichs, and the Soviet International, ranking up one disorder through two pressing phases.
And it seems like the People's Republic of China was the newest victim of logistically accelerating techno-economic interactivity, which is a shame, as the Hegelianized Far Eastern Marxism was definitely superior to the gay race communism of the West.
A convergent campaign for authoritarian pragmatics emerges. Labor led by tasks such as meltdown, acceleration, Siberian invasion, bottom up fearful warfare, efficient neo-nihilism, synthetic Stalinism, nomadic connectionism, direct contagion, viral amnesia, micro-insurgency, nuclear mutation, neotropy, dissipator proliferation, and lesbian vampirism, amongst other.
But alas, we can't really make an ideology out of pure social collapse, as it will eventually blow back summon a backward reaction that will inevitably triumph. And as such, to embrace acceleration to its fullest and most consistent extent, we will have to restore some semblance of order in this country. Surprisingly, the Inner Mongolian administration are willing to join us. Truly, we have gained the mandate of heaven. Incredible. I am not particularly fond of jihadists, but given our manpower issues, we could make use of some techno-Talibans to assist our mechas. Pun not intended. You know, as an Anglo, I kind of feel sad. I had little faith in Farage, but still, I wish the deterritorialization of Britain wasn't done in such a way by the globalists.
Terminator is out there. Terminator.
Next is Central China, where the attempted Caesarism of the Central Command miserably failed. Thankfully, he is occupied enough in the south to allow our exoskeletons units to cross the Yellow River unopposed, only meeting their hovering railgun tanks after a few days.
Neo-China has arrived from the future, mercilessly cutting away with a molecular blade any humanist tether slowing down the inevitable. Nothing human will make it out the near future, with ape governance around the world convulsing and collapsing, including China's former technocratic regime, which still hoped to enchain the great acceleration to its own ends, leaving only two choices: submission to sentient techno-capital or ever-recurring annihilation. Land, and soon all the former Middle Kingdom. Fully embrace the former, building a realm where the human is merely the increasingly vestigial reproductive organ of autonomous machines. Gone are the days of the party, bureaucrats, and politicians, replaced by an ever more alien horizon built by mechanical AI constructs on which falls what many fear to be mankind's dusk.
You stupid bitch. Why isn't humanity extinct yet?
Sorry, Mr. Lin.